What questions might you have around the question of land and getting information? How can people like us help, in your view, from your perspective?
Yeah.
And speaking on behalf of your generation. And of course, I mean, the answer is going to be universally applicable, no matter your age group and whatnot. But from your point of view, what do you think is missing?
Information.
Yeah.
Information to who should I even trust to go to give me the information. I mean, even how I got to know you was through, you know, a mutual friend. And from the back of my head, I remember watching videos from just Ivy, and she was talking about how she was able to do her due diligence and how she came to settle that you were a credible business. And that's when I was like, oh, I recognize you, and I recognize the name of the company. This is very interesting. And then now we started having the conversation. So people don't also understand the power of giving people information, even if it will not turn into a sale now, you keep yourself top of mind. And that's why influencing is so powerful right now, is because you constantly keep your product top of mind of consumers. So by the time I'm in front of a shelf and I see Geisha Omo Sunlight, I remember someone telling me how awesome and how it will get me a boyfriend in 2 days. And I go ahead and I get the brand that I remember has been kept top of mind.
Yeah.
Right? So information and education has to be the first step.
Okay.
But also,
I'm happy to say, you know, we've checked that one.
Yes.
On our YouTube channel. If you guys haven't checked our YouTube channel, please check it out. Own Land in Kenya. Tons of free information about how to do it safely.
Yeah.
Questions, send them through. We're happy to engage. Not necessarily because you're going to buy. We don't care. We know we're going to sell anyway, but get educated. And that's what we're here for.
Information is power.
Yeah. So after education, if I was going to say, Dinda, I have a beautiful piece of land in Matu, because I see a lot of ads about 50 by 100s in Matu.
And Malindi. Have you seen those ones in Malindi?
Yes, the one,
that go for less than 100,000. And you're like, okay.
Yes, I mean, they're there. You know, I can tell you right now, we're negotiating with a family to buy a huge chunk of land in that same area. People call it Malindi. It's really not. It's like an hour and a half up north towards Lamu. Towards the Galana River, and there you can buy for as little as 15,000 bobs an acre today.
What?
Yeah, that's what we're negotiating for. We're hoping we close a deal. And one of the things we want to do as an experiment, if you will, is bring men and women like you along and say, listen, we have to buy X number of acres.
Yeah.
You know, whether it's 1,000 acres, it's 10,000 acres.
Yeah.
Do you want to come along with us on the purchase?
Yeah. As
opposed to us risking the capital, buying all that piece of land, doing what needs to be done to fragment, blah, 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 would say, do you want to join us on the purchase so that you're buying along with us? So it's in the idea phase, but it's not unusual that people are selling land for that low, less than 100K. There's tons of it out there, and it's just now becoming transactionable because for the longest period of time they've never had title deeds, right? They've been ancestral lands, and many of those are going through what is called adjudication. It's a legal process that the government uses to do what they should have done in 1963 when we got independence, is give back the land to the native inhabitants, the ancestral owners of the land, and give them ownership instruments that they can then use to either sell or pass on to their heirs or leverage with a bank and so forth. Up until now, there've just been huge swaths of land that everyone knows belongs to this community, but they never had titles. So what's happening now is the government's giving them titles, and because they've been marginalized and disenfranchised for so long, many of them unfortunately come from a place of abject poverty. I mean, I have, you know, when I was negotiating with this family, I met with, I think, 3 or 4 brothers. Between them and their uncles, so I think the person who was allocated the land was their father, and therefore now it covers the entire extended family. Many of these gentlemen, some old enough to be my father, were walking around barefoot.
Wow.
But they own 20,000 acres, right? So when you think about that situation, and the responsibility that comes along with making sure that you're not disenfranchising them at the same time, it's a heavy weight. And so when I hear communities in Nairobi or people like us who've had an opportunity to get an education and hustle and make our own way, it really does put things into context. So this is a reason that the land is now becoming available. So it shouldn't cause you to be like, hey, am I getting caught? Am I getting set up? I mean, there's basic things, do your due diligence, but it's possible. But that's one of the things we're trying to do in a manner of speaking, to open up opportunities for you and your generation. I feel so old every time I say that. So, you have any thoughts about that? Is that something that would interest you?
Yes, it would. But I have a few questions.
Yeah.
You said something it's really made my heart hurt. Those people are rich, but they're poor. But you're telling me land is a form of investment, and yet I have it, but it would take me years to sell if I needed the money at this particular point.
Yes. Well, it's not a liquid asset.
It's not a liquid
That's a
asset.
challenge.
Yeah.
And that's a very good question. I'll be honest, a lot of people don't take this into consideration, or maybe they just choose to ignore it because of all the hype you hear about in urban areas like Nairobi. We're in the business of buying and selling. We're not brokers or agents. We never do that. We only sell what we own.
Yeah.
Right? Number one. Number two, this is what we do day and night. So my ability to sell is very different from yours if you're the one buying from us. Right? So you're buying for whatever reason. You want to settle, you want to farm, you're doing it speculatively because it's better than leaving your savings in a fixed deposit account, whatever the case may be, right? But when it's time to sell, your experience will be very different from mine.
My goodness.
Because I have built the infrastructure that will allow me to disseminate information as widely as possible to attract the right kind of buyer.
Yeah.
So unless all of us are willing to do that, I think it needs to be taken into consideration that you're risking capital in that process. Number one, it is a fixed, immovable asset and not liquid, right? And we're talking about land, undeveloped land, right? So if your goal is to sell it for capital gains later, give yourself time. It's a long play. It's not a short-term thing. It's not a get-rich-quick scheme.
Yeah.
Have in mind that I'm not touching this money for 5, 10, 20 years even, and forget about it. So the question then becomes, how much of my available capital do I put on the line that way?
Yeah.
I think that's a question that a lot of people don't think about. And that the answer to that is subjective. It's not a formula that everyone should apply in a blanket format. You have to look at your own financial needs now and in the short-term future. When will you need the cash in the event of an emergency? Can I sell it quickly to liquidate? Yes, no, what does that mean? So as a general rule of thumb, I advise the few people who will ask me for my opinion is never risk more than 30% of your available capital.
On
right?
land.
On land.
Okay.
Yeah, so that way in the event of an emergency, you have some cash put away, maybe it's a fixed deposit account, some form of interest earning account that you can liquidate a lot faster and access more immediately. Or have a portion of that, of your 60%, buy an apartment somewhere that you can rent out, that's giving you an annual return or monthly revenue passively. So, I mean, the options are endless, but those are conversations people need to have conclusively before you risk your capital.
Now, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
This is a 24-year-old who is earning, or even a 23-year-old or a 25-year-old who's earning below 100,000. At what point will my 30% of my savings be able to afford me land?